Hey, my creative friends. We are here to talk about creativity, and I will stop shaking the table. So yesterday was the 100th video. Today's 101. I don't know why, I just felt super excited. I felt like I had accomplished something, and it just felt good. Hi, Trisha. And Trisha was there yesterday for my 100th video. Today we are going to talk about deadlines, and this I have a hard time with this. I think I had a little breakthrough tonight when I was working on this. So truth be told, I'll just get real honest. Sometimes at 8:07, I still don't know what I'm going to talk about on my video. And that just like freaks me out. But you know, and then I figured out like 8:15, and then I do my outline real quick. And that just really pushes the deadline issue. And luckily, what I've chosen to talk about creativity and creativity in your regular life, like with a family and kids and husband and responsibilities. Luckily for me, it's a topic that I can talk about on the spot. I forget what the word is. Anyways, on the spot. I can do that because it's part of me. I've been doing it for years, decades, and so I can do that. So the deadline of not knowing 15 minutes before I'm going to do something, it still works because of the topic, because of what I'm doing. But we're going to talk more about deadlines tonight. But first, I want to kind of define deadlines a little bit, in my view, anyways. I know. Elizabeth Gilbert talks about in her book, Big Magic, that, when she was young, she did this little ceremony. Trisha says 11th hour inspiration. You can teach it. True. And that is the only thing that saves me, Trisha, is that I do live it. I do. It's not like somebody asked me to talk about science and chemistry, or I'm not even good at geography, places where places are and stuff like that. But and I wouldn't be able to talk about Sweden until now, living in Sweden. So yes, knowing what and living something, it makes it so much different. So Elizabeth Gilbert in her book Big Magic talks about how when she was young, she made this ceremony up and this vow in order to become a writer. And she talks about how she wasn't going to make writing do anything for her. She just was going to do everything for writing to make sure she did it. And she said she literally lit a candle and got on her knees and, verbally had this vow that she did. And she said that in her book, my deadline was never. Okay, so, and then there's Rachel Hollis, who says in her book, Stop Apologizing, Girl, Stop Apologizing. She says that she has a struggle with the idea of deadlines because if she put a deadline on some of her goals or dreams, like a year goal of I'm going to have this done in a year, then she would have quit, they both made mention of they would have quit because like for Rachel Hollis, her thing was she needed to get a social following, and that took 2 years to do before an agent would take her seriously or consider her work. Put a deadline on like a year, maybe she would have quit. So I wanted to make a distinction here about, to me, those seem like, for Elizabeth Gilbert, that seems like becoming. She wants to become a writer, become an author, and really there is no deadline to that because that's who she's going to become. And so that's the end. It's not like, now writing a book has a deadline, but becoming an author doesn't have a deadline. And for Rachel Hollis, I think also, the idea is that you finish a product, and that deadline is to finish a product, and then the goal is something else. And we don't necessarily have control over that goal. We don't have control. We don't turn all the knobs for that thing to happen. So we can't necessarily put a deadline on that. Does that make sense? So to me, a deadline is not something where you become deadlines. Dreams aren't deadlines. Passion isn't a deadline. So there's a distinction. I put the distinction on deadlines is finishing a product, making something, having something tangible, and it has a deadline. What you do with that tangible thing afterward can be open to however long. Like I said, publishing it, but you have to have something to publish. You have to have a painting to put in a gallery. You have to have those recipes in order to have them in that book. So to me, a deadline is you put a date on producing a work. And so deadlines have always been it's a hard thing. For me, deadlines have been good in that I have actually gotten some things finished. If you have a problem with finishing, deadlines are a very good thing to help you get things done. Sometimes it's forced work, so it's work, but you can actually get work done. So maybe a forced work is better than no work. So, but let's talk about the two types of I see that there are. And you guys may see others and may add to this, but I see that there's an eternal deadline, a self-imposed deadline where you become the one who is the arbitrator of that and say, I want this done at a certain time. And amateurs, you can use this more, and professionals should use this. Then there's the external deadline. With the deadline that's driven by something external, like an outside source, a company, a deadline for, that they want this work for a certain thing. And that usually is a professional level, though amateurs can use that. I see an external deadline more for a professional and an internal deadline more for an amateur. Now, can it be around? Absolutely. I think professionals should continue to have deadlines to complete works that they love, that it's just where they produce a work because they want to. And I think amateurs, even though they're not going to turn in something for a deadline like a contest, should use those deadlines to sharpen their skills, to be able to say, I can produce on demand. So I think that they should be switched around, and that people who create, those of us who create, should use both internally motivated deadlines and externally motivated deadlines. So the internal motivated deadline is, there's a quote from Jarvis, who says, by giving yourself deadlines to tackle tough creative challenges that are in tune with your imagination, you'll do your best work. Absolutely. That's absolutely truth. When you have nobody you're doing it for, you do your best work. I told you before that I met with another artist, Victoria Johnson, and she consulted with her, and she picked out the work that I didn't have to do. I did it for myself. I picked it out that I wanted to do this and did it. But of external deadlines, the book Art and Fear says good artists thrive on exhibition and publication deadlines. In healthy competition times, the pressure of a deadline serves as a source of energy in the pieces you make. So you can see the value of having external deadlines and internal deadlines where you make them yourself. I think that we need to have both those. And I've done both. I've done some work where it's an internal thing where I decide I'm going to do this by this date. In fact, I have some works that I'm working on right now, and I feel super good about them. I feel that they are coming along very authentically, that they feel more like the work I want to do. And that's another thing too, is that if you give yourself an internal deadline, you do start to produce the work you want to do. Let's see. So either way, the external or the internal, what it does is it pushes us to progress in making the work. Pushes us. Sometimes we do need that little extra push because it's too easy to say, oh, I'll get to it. So the challenges today is to make some deadlines for yourself. And I'm not talking about the dreams or the goals or the becoming. I'm talking about to produce a work. Set some dates, set some things to produce a work. Find a contest. If you're an amateur and you aren't doing it professionally, find a contest that you think you would enjoy. Look at the dates. Like, for instance, they paint and draw. They have challenges all the time. And see something that you want to connect with and produce a work for that. And then also have your internal goals. And if you're a professional, set some dates to do personal projects, deadlines to do personal projects. So if you're going to push yourself to progress, there's a few things to do to help yourself out to make sure you hit your deadline. And this is where I think I had a little bit of a breakthrough myself, because sometimes I wait till the last minute. I don't know what it is. And so I think I figured out a little bit about that tonight. Okay, so first off, you have to schedule. You have to schedule in the work. So if you know the deadline's coming in a month, you've got to schedule in the work. But in order to schedule in the work, you really have to know how long something takes. I know I can do a painting about a certain size, and it can be the limited palette of Payne's Gray, White, and Raw Umber. And I can get a painting done in 4 hours. I know when I did my 50 days, 50 faces in 50 days, right before my 50th birthday, I know that a single portrait could take me 2 hours, and a double portrait would take me about 4. So I know how long it takes me to do certain things. I know that if I want to do a certain format for they draw and paint, it's going to take me, they draw and, I said that wrong before. It was they draw and cook, they draw and travel, and they draw and garden. That's who you should look up if you're going to do challenges. But so I know that that's going to take a day, a full on day. And so if it's 8 hours, so I know if I can only work 4 hours, I'll do it 4 hours this day and 4 hours another day. So you really have to know your work and how much you can produce and what the time frame is to produce it. And then you can slip it into that schedule. Then you need to put in some breathing room. And this is where I think I learned something, because sometimes I really felt like I'm postponing and I'm stalling. But in reality, in the back of my mind, the ideas are still there. I'm working on the ideas. I'm looking for inspiration. I'm looking for discovery. I'm looking for things, mulling over compositions in my head, even though I'm not doing the actual work. So, and I thought that was a problem, but I don't necessarily think it's a problem anymore. Unless I miss the deadline. Unless I do it so much I miss the deadline. That's the problem. So you want to schedule in a certain amount of time where you know you're going to let it incubate in your head, and that you're not going to be producing. So that might be at the beginning where you figure out what you're going to do. You're going to take 2 or 3 days, depending on you can take 2 or 3 weeks, depending on what the external deadline is. And just mull it over, think it over, have it be part of you, and then see it in your conversations and what you see and read, and kind of have that discovery. And then leave a little time for the unknown, where your family, somebody gets sick, somebody needs you to go to a concert, to spend some extra time with a friend. So you have to leave in enough time that's not so tight that you're like day in, day out, and you're not having a chance to actually live your regular life. And sometimes I think we forget that we're not, as mothers and family, we have families, we don't have the luxury of just walking out of the house and coming home at night after we've spent a day in the studio. Most of us don't. So you have to realize that life is going to play out, and so you need to slip in a little time and make room for that. And then the last tip for that, making the schedule and pushing us to progress and hitting that deadline, is know how you work, and taking the prime times that you work. So for me, working at early in the morning hours is not the same as working for 4 hours at night. It's just not. And so you have to know what works best for you. So those are the kinds of things to help you, push you to make that deadline. So I want you to remember, external, internal deadlines. Deadlines are not the same. Deadline is to produce a work, not necessarily to become something or to hit your goal or to make a dream come true. And that's the tip. Set deadlines for yourself, external and internal. And tell me what you think about deadlines. Tell me your insights about deadlines. What you think about it. Maybe you don't agree with the idea of becoming in dreams and goals. I don't have a problem with people disagreeing with me. I have 9 kids. People have disagreed with me before. Oh, one of my things fell. Anyways, remember, you have a creative heartbeat, so listen for it, and I will be back tomorrow, and I hope you will be back tomorrow too. Probably, Trisha, you will be, won't you? Bye for now.